watched this young man, develop and grow up right before my eyes.
Just a young guy, had no idea what his strengths, weaknesses were, if he was going to play in the big leagues ever.
I signed my contract the next morning, and then I believe it was a Sunday that I jumped on an airplane and flew to Billings, Montana. When I was growing up, I enjoyed football more than baseball. But I had 3 older brothers that were better baseball players than football players, and so I just played baseball just to give me something to do in the summertime. And little did I know where it would take me in the long run, but my dream was to get a college scholarship to go play football somewhere. That did not happen. Halfway through my senior year, I was no longer the quarterback. I became a wide receiver because I threw too many interceptions, and my arm wasn't that strong. So football kind of was not interested in me, and by the time I graduated high school and the Major League Baseball draft came around, or even prior to that, I mean, I didn't have any baseball scholarships to go anywhere. And then I got drafted in the second round by the Royals and have been a Royal since June of 1971. I think probably, well, not a big league player, professional baseball player. I think probably my junior year in high school. I didn't play my freshman year. I broke my wrist, so I wasn't able to play all summer my freshman year in high school. My sophomore year, I started on the varsity team, which was very good. A lot of scouts came to our games. I don't think they're looking at sophomores then. I think they're looking at juniors and seniors and trying to follow their careers a little bit. My junior year, we played in the state championship game at Anaheim Stadium, and I was a starting shortstop and hit third. We lost to a team that we beat my senior year, and they had about 3 or 4 that were really good players coming back. In fact, 2 of those guys were #1 draft picks, Roy Howell and Roy Thomas. Roy Howell was a third baseman for Toronto and Texas for 10 years in the big leagues, and I think Roy Thomas, had a short career with the Philadelphia Phillies as a pitcher, but I thought I would get drafted. I didn't think I'd get drafted in the second round, just mainly because I didn't have any college scholarships. I think if we could go back in time, I would probably get some scholarship offers, but all in all, I think I made the right decision because school was not a #1 issue with me. Education wasn't that important. As I look back on it now, I think education is very important, but as an 18-year-old kid, I didn't think that much of it. And when the opportunity came to make some money, go out and play, make money, with a chance of someday becoming a Major League Baseball player, that kind of got the competitive juices flowing, so that's what I decided to do. It was hot in Billings in the middle of June, and, my brother Ken, I know, went to one of his games barefoot. Growing up on the beach, that's what you do. You're barefoot or you wear flip-flops all the time. And I wore flip-flops into the locker room one day, and our coach, Gary Blaylock, kind of let me know that flip-flops were not allowed. And it's funny, walking into the stadium tonight, I saw Billy Butler, and Billy was wearing shorts, t-shirt, and flip-flops. So I guess the game's come a long way since 1971.
He was not shy, but he was respectful, I think is the best way of putting it. And listening, obviously, a lot more than talking, which is always good tact if you're a rookie. But I remember him at third base working out and really trying to improve. George, when he first started on the big league level, had some problems defensively, and it was almost exclusively throwing. He didn't make many glove errors. He made enough throwing errors that I think he worked on his defense every bit as hard as he worked on his hitting, and we all know how hard he worked on his hitting with Charlie.
First thing I noticed about George was, we're both from Southern California, so we had a few stories to tell about that, spending time on the beach. We both, played multiple sports, but how competitive he was. Even at a young age, I think he was just 20 in 73. And this kid hated a bad day, a bad week, bad month. And, oftentimes let it show. Even as a 20-year-old, he was just so never met and never knew, and to this day, anybody that wanted to win more than George Brett. The guy that comes closest for me that I knew personally was Nolan Ryan, but George just refused to lose at anything. Kind of a fun time for me in Omaha, because actually in '72 the pitchers still hit, so I still enjoyed hitting, and I used to take batting practice with the Omaha Royals back in '73, and George and I would team up and play home run derby against any two they wanted to pick, and I don't think we ever lost. I mean, we were raking, and we hit a lot of home runs. It was a lot of fun. Harry Dunlop was our manager down there, and Jack McKeon was managing the Big League Club, and Jack McKeon thought that he was going to be a 260, 270 hitter and be a great defensive ball player. And I could see that George was not going to fail at anything he did. And he worked continuously on his fielding, continuously on his hitting. And I thought George was going to be a great defensive ball player, but I also felt that George was going to be a great hitter, again, because he hated to fail so much, and George was going to do whatever it took not to let that happen. And then when Charlie Lau were introduced, just kind of, for me, it stepped up the timetable. Okay. And you'd have to talk to George, obviously, to find out exactly what he thinks might have happened. But I'm pretty much of the opinion that George Brett was going to be a Hall of Fame hitter regardless. But Charlie helped him get there quicker. Mm-hmm. Charlie helped a lot with his confidence, and Charlie was really a George Brett fan. And I mean, Charlie spent as much time with everybody else, but George Brett was a guy that he'd get Charlie out. We'd be in Oakland, and he'd go, Charlie, let's go hit. Boston, Charlie, let's go hit. I just wanted to hit all the time, and I loved the field, so I'd go there and just shag. Because it was fun for me, because I still felt like I was an outfielder, could be an outfielder. I hated pitching. Over and over, I mean, George and Hal McRae, they named it the Hal McRae rule with the slide, but George was the same way. And for a young man, teaching some of the veterans how to play the game of baseball was kind of refreshing. He and Hal McRae were just like a dynamic duo as far as, this is what you do. When you break up a double play, you let them know you were there. And, I saw that right away. As soon as he came up, he was... not shy whatsoever. He wasn't really, arrogant, wasn't egotistical. I think George had a quiet confidence within himself. And, he kind of showed it to me from the first time he stepped on a ball field in Omaha, and it just continued at the major league level. And of course, in a very short period of time, he was just, became George Brett. Yeah. Kind of a funny story in Omaha. Mark Littell, who was a relief pitcher for us back in those days, was in Omaha, and he and George were roommates in Omaha, and they shared an apartment. And we went over to their house, or their apartment, and my wife was there, again, Tom Bergmeyer Murphy, Buck Martinez, all of our wives, girlfriends, whatever the case may be, they threw like a barbecue, and George was cooking. And George's barbecue was basically doing hamburgers on a frying pan. And Littell just kept bothering him, pestering, when's mine done? When's mine done? I want to eat, I'm sorry. George goes, watch this, he takes some condiment, just kind of gives him a little sprinkling, much like seasoning, and Mark's hamburgers, flips them over. I go, George, you can't. He goes, it's all right, it's Mark, he'll be all right. And served it to him about 20, 30 minutes later after I was about eating, we're doing something. And George goes, Mark, how are those burgers? He goes, they're really good, a little gritty. He goes, should have spent a little more money on the meat. George had that side of him. George liked it. George liked to have fun. He liked to have a good time. But
I was living in a hotel or a apartment complex on 84th and Q. I believe it was the Wentworth Apartments in Omaha, Nebraska. My roommates were Mark Littell and Buck Martinez. And Harry Malmberg, our manager, came and knocked on the door, and we said, oh God, what do we do wrong now? And it was about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 11:30. We're getting ready to barbecue some burgers, and next thing you know, he says, congratulations, you're going to the big leagues. And Buck and I both said, congratulations, Mark. And he says, no, you. All of a sudden, I got real excited and didn't get to eat lunch, packed real quick, had to drive to the stadium, get my stuff in order, baseball equipment, get all that done. I had to pack some stuff. The team was in Chicago. Harry told me I'm not playing. I'm not going to arrive until 5 o'clock at night from Omaha to Chicago. Jumped in a cab, pulled up outside Comiskey Park. walking in with a suitcase and a baseball bag and, going through the main offices and then walking through the thing, batting practice is going on and people are going and buying beers and hot dogs and I'm walking through all these people and the next thing I know I walk in the locker room and I look up and I think I was hitting eighth and playing third base. Didn't even get any swings and went out and got loose just before the game, played some catch, and I think I batted 7th or 8th that night against Stan Bonson, and the first pitch he threw me, I hit a line drive and he caught it right here, and the next at-bat, got a broken bat single to left center field, little blue. Yeah. Oh yeah, I called my parents and called my brother Ken, who was in the big leagues at that time, and told him, and he said, if you ever need any advice or need anything, you just let me know. And he said the one thing he always said was just go out and have fun. Try to have more fun than anybody else. And when you try to have fun, it takes a lot of the pressure off of your performance and gets your mind off other things, failure. And because if you're trying to have fun, you're not going to think of failure. If you go out there and you want to have a bad time, think of all the failure you've had in the past, and I guarantee you'll have a bad game. So I went out and tried to have as much fun as possible. Yeah, I was intimidated. I remember standing there at third base, and they had really bad AstroTurf on the infield, and they had a big dirt area where the base paths were, and then it was natural grass out in right field. And see Dick Allen come up, who was just a big old strong massive guy, and Splittorff was pitching, and I'm saying, please don't hit it to me, please. I was saying I didn't want a lot of action at third base. I'd never really played on AstroTurf before, with the exception of a short time in spring training, but I didn't want a lot of ground balls. I think I might have got 1 or 2, handled them successfully. I got 1 hit. I was very happy. I believe we won the game. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe we won. And then we went to Minnesota that night after the game, and I went 1 for 4 again, didn't make any errors, and then I didn't play again for 2 weeks.
And Charlie, in his quiet way, went up to George and asked him if he was tired of hitting 167, whatever it was. Oh yeah, sure, you bet. I will see you at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. We were in Baltimore, as I recall, at that time. We had a day off the next day. Charlie said, I will see you at 2 o'clock on the field tomorrow. And that's where they started.
Charlie came up to me at the All-Star break and just said, George, I think you have a chance to play. I'm the only coach here that does. You got to give me your heart and believe me on this one. But if you change some things, I think you can survive at this level. Right now, you're not surviving. Well, I had no place else to go. What am I going to do? Say, no, I like hitting 210. This is great. Yeah, it's a lot of fun hitting 210. So we showed up. Back then, there was 3 days off for the All-Star break. Wednesday, practice might have been at 6 o'clock. And he said, meet me there at 2. And we'll go over and talk about a lot of stuff, and we'll figure out a swing that's going to work for you. He didn't have the answer. We tinkered with a lot of stances, and he had a theory and a philosophy that he believed in, but my stance just wouldn't let me do that. So we experimented with a lot of stances. We watched some video that he had of other players, and he told me his beliefs, and then I went out there and took some extra batting practice.
I think it's safe to say he totally broke down Brett's swing, because as I recall, when he first started, he held the bat way up there above his head. And Charlie said, why are you holding your bat there? And George's reply was, because Yaz does. And of course, Yaz was one of George's favorites. And Charlie said, well, that's fine. He said, that's good. And he said, and Roy White of the Yankees, when he's sitting left-handed, holds the bat right off of his left hip. And George said, yeah, he does. And so Charlie said, well, let me ask you another question. Where do you have to have your hands to really start to get the bat toward the ball? Right there. And Charlie said, bingo. He said, now, let's think about this for a minute. If we have to get our hands here to hit, why don't we start here? Good idea. And you can just see the thing coming into shape. And then, of course, Charlie had all of his little rules of hitting. You had a little backward move. George always said that little back to go forward. Jack Nicklaus has his little head turn to get everything going. And that was George's little trigger mechanism, and then everything else. I think there were 14 rules that Charlie had of hitting. Firm front side, back side to firm front side, and weight shift, and all that stuff. Yeah. But work. Yeah. So, but as I said, defense was as much a work ethic with him as hitting.
I'm pretty much of the opinion that George Brett was going to be a Hall of Fame hitter regardless, but Charlie helped him get there quicker. Charlie helped a lot with his confidence, and Charlie was really a George Brett fan. And I mean, Charlie spent as much time with everybody else, but George Brett was a guy that would, I mean, he'd get Charlie out. We'd be in Oakland, and he'd go, Charlie, let's go hit. Boston, Charlie, let's go hit. I just wanted to hit all the time.
A month to 6 weeks after they started the breakdown of the swing, and Charlie got him and really started working him. Yeah, and it just, once that all started, you could just see the expansion of the confidence. I belong here. I can play with these guys. And there's always a doubt. When everybody gets to the big leagues, there's nobody that thinks, yeah, I'm going to be able to play up here. I don't care how they look, what they say, how they sound, until they prove. You got to prove to yourself. And then you start proving to your teammates and your manager and everybody else. But this is the person you got to convince first, you, that I can play up here.
Ended up hitting, I believe, 308. Hal McRae came up to me after the season and says, man, you're screwed. You're 22 years old. You just hit 300. They're going to expect it of you the rest of your life. And I'm still, well, Hal, I expect it the rest of my life. So I'm not screwed. I'm in a pretty good position. And then the next year, I won my first batting championship at 23. And I just stayed with his program the rest of my career. And I'm glad I did. But he was a remarkable man. I put a lot of trust in him, and he basically put his reputation on the line for me. Before every game, even regular season game, even spring training games, I was nervous before every game. I ask the guys now on the team if they're nervous. They say no. I'm saying, how can you not be nervous? Now, once the game starts, you're not nervous anymore, but just that anticipation of going out there and performing.
Home, here he comes, the throw, straight. Brett has doubled. He is 3 for 3, and the Royals lead 4-2.
George Brett's greatness is measured in numbers, 3,154 career hits, which comes in 16th on the all-time list, 317 home runs, by far a franchise record. And you saw what happened when an umpire tried to take away one of those home runs because of a little pine tar, the fastest dugout to home plate charge in the game's history.
And they called George Brett out, and here comes an argument. Here comes an argument. George Brett at the plate. Oh, and he is furious. He's trying to get to an umpire. George Brett may have already been suspended.
Brett's greatness is measured in awards. He's the only Royal honored as American League MVP. He was a 13-time All-Star. When the Hall of Fame called, Brett learned he'd been elected with the 4th highest percentage of votes in history. His greatness is measured in achievements. He's the only player to win batting titles in 3 different decades. The numbers, the awards, the achievements clearly define one of the best careers in baseball history.
Never met and never knew, and to this day, anybody that wanted to win more than George Brett. The guy that comes closest for me that I knew personally was Nolan Ryan. But George just refused to lose at anything.
I've said that he is the toughest mentally player that I've ever known. And there was no shirking that responsibility. He loved being up there in the clutch. Did he always come through? No. It seems like it because we remember those moments. But he did, I think, more often than not.
Where Brett takes the next step are the moments. Those occasions when a game's outcome or the fate of an entire season is reduced to the time it takes to snap a finger. George Brett lived for those moments. Like the 3-run homer he blasted in the top of the 8th inning at Yankee Stadium to tie the deciding game of the 1976 American League Championship Series, only to have Chris Chambliss steal his thunder in the 9th. Or the 3 home runs off of the Yankees' Catfish Hunter in the 3rd game of the 1978 Championship Series. There's the grandest home run of his career, that 3-run bomb off of Goose Gossage in the 1980 series, yet again at Yankee Stadium, that paved the way for the Royals' sweep and first World Series appearance.
Now Brett steps in. Gossie's ready to pitch. Swinging a high fly ball. Deep right field. There she goes. Home run. Home run by Brett. And the Royals lead 4-2.
The epic game, the 1985 ALCS against the Blue Jays, Game 3. The Royals were down 2-0 in the series, had lost 10 straight postseason games. One more loss and they were toast. What happens? Brett goes 4 for 4, bangs out 2 home runs, scores 4, drives in 3, makes the defensive play of the game when he throws out a runner at the plate and the Royals win 6-5. Royals broadcaster Denny Matthews has been calling games since the team's inception, called it the biggest victory in team history, and who's to argue with that?
He dominated that game offensively and defensively, and he just mentally he willed the Royals to win that game.
They'd go on to win the series and the World Series as well.
The Royals have won the 1985 World Series, and they converge on the mound and hold an impromptu celebration.
The question's been asked, what's your greatest moment in baseball? I always say winning the World Series, because it doesn't matter who you are. If you're the clubhouse guy, if you're the ticket taker, the guy selling cotton candy, man, when that game's over, the 5th or 7th game of the World Series, and you're part of a championship team, it doesn't matter who you are. You feel as good as a guy that was the World Series most valuable player. There's no better feeling in the world that you can experience in a baseball uniform.
In 2 World Series, Brett hit .373. In 43 total postseason games, he hit 10 home runs.
I would always say this to myself: I can do this. I can do this. Yeah, I can do this. I just try to give myself some self-confidence that I'm capable of handling anything that's thrown on my table. And it's easy to believe in yourself if you've had success in situations before. Yeah. And I had some success in situations before, so it was easy for me to pump myself up and really believe in myself, because if you don't believe in yourself, you have no chance.
What's the true greatness of a ball player? It's all those measurables, but it's also the ability to seize the day, and nobody captured those moments like George Brett.
Who was traded 9 or 10 times. He told me that he thought it was important after my first full year of having success, hitting over 300. He said, George, if I was you, I would buy a house in Kansas City and get to know as many people in town as you possibly can, because it's going to make he says, I got a feeling you're going to be there a long time. And so I said, but Cameron, it's local. He says, it'll be the best thing that you can do in the long run, believe me. Get to know the town and let the town get to know you. And so I did. I bought a house in Blue Springs, Missouri. That's where all the players lived, and Paul Splittorff was my realtor. He got the commission, and he picked out this house that I didn't like, but he said, "Oh, this is a good investment, George." So I bought a home, and I just became part of Kansas City. At first, it was a little difficult living away from all your friends, and I didn't really know many people in Kansas City. But the longer I was here, the more fun I had. And then I discovered Westport and the Plaza, and then I moved over to Fairway, Kansas, and I met more people. And now I have more friends here, obviously, living here 40 years, than I do still live in my hometown, because all those guys have moved on to Boise and Michigan and all these other places all over the country. So this is my home. My kids were all born here. They all went to high school here. Now I'm friends with all their parents. I hope some of the younger Royals that have a chance to be here for a while will consider being part of the community and meeting a lot of people here, because it makes your time so much more fun when you're here in the summer if you have people to share it with besides the guys in the locker room. Yeah. And that's what I did, and my brother was right. Yeah. He definitely was right. I'm glad I did that.